Hello, beautiful. How are you?
Hi, so good to see you and both of you guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, beautiful. Have a wonderful talk and enjoy. I'm so excited for your new life in Florida, Dr. Solt. It just sounds like things are coming along.
It's great, but it's so humid right now and I'm so pregnant, so it's just a little uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh, can't wait to see that baby. Have a great session, y'all.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. So, hello, Dr. Sabrina Solt. Do you know Richard?
I think that just via social media, but I don't think we've ever actually the pleasure of speaking. So nice to formally meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Sabrina. Thank you very much for coming on board.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. This is so fun. I was thinking just like how cool this whole concept is. And I mean, if you haven't already, this should definitely be at least an annual thing for sure.
Right. Okay.
The pressure's on. I'm sorry.
Thanks for that. You can go now. So yeah, we're 6 hours in. 6 hours in. It's not bad. Just for the viewers who don't know you, could you just give us a little intro to who you are and why you're here?
Yeah, I'm Dr. Sabrina Solt. I am a naturopathic medical doctor by training and certifications and all that good stuff. Used to live in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I currently still operate a regenerative and anti-aging medicine practice. Currently live in Florida. I have been a carnivore for over a year and a half now. Somewhat shifted in the last, I would say, 7 or so months because I've been pregnant. So I've been incorporating a little bit more ketovore, animal-based, just due to some meat aversions and stuff that I've had. Otherwise, I feel purpose in this community is to share health information that helps people really try to figure out what might be happening underneath as far as root cause issues as to why they might have had to find their way to carnivore in the first place to help heal a lot of things, or also why carnivore may be challenging for some people as well too.
Brilliant. Now, Richard, have you got a question? Do you want to start with a question?
I'll leave you kick this off and I'll jump in with something for about half an hour probably.
That's right. Well, something piqued my interest straight away. You said now you're pregnant, Sabrina, that you felt some cravings and you've added some stuff. So what have you added?
So when I first got pregnant, I mean, I'm 32 weeks now. So we're 7 months in, we're very close to the end, which has been great. And it wasn't necessarily that I was craving anything as much as I had meat aversion. And it honestly broke my heart. Like, I can't tell you how upset I was because I was sitting at work one day and I had my ribeye that I normally would bring with me to work, cooked it up, got my butter on it, and I sat there and stared at it. And I was like, I cannot eat this for the life of me. I knew I was pregnant already at that point. I was really hoping that this wouldn't happen. This happened with my first pregnancy as well. This is number 3 for me. And I got out my phone, Uber Eats, and I got some sashimi delivered to the office because that was all I really wanted at that point was just give me some fish. The meat aversions lasted until somewhat into second trimester. So I ate some chicken. We had a period of time where we actually did a vacation to Turkey and Egypt. And this was planned before I ever became pregnant. And we were in a situation where we were on this cruise ship. There was only one option for food, one option for meals, specific meal times. I wouldn't recommend it. But I didn't trust a lot of the meat they were cooking. It was mystery sauces, could have been thickened with flour, which I have a pretty severe gluten intolerance. The only things that were safe for me on that cruise ship were fruit and full fat yogurt. So I kind of sustained on those for about 4 or 5 days, which not ideal, but it's what I had access to. Even all of the eggs were cooked in seed oils. They had the fake butter packets, which were actually mostly seed oils. And I react very poorly to those. So I keep them out of my diet. Other than that, to get over a lot of the meat aversions, what I had to do was condiments, we'll say. So if I was eating ground beef, I would need to like chop up tiny pieces of pickles to go with them, or I would add in like a small amount of sauerkraut, like just these things that I knew I could tolerate, or even a little bit of avocado, things I knew didn't bother me. I got into carnivore because I had health issues, severe gut issues, skin issues, anxiety, things that all really dramatically improved. So if I am going to quote unquote stray from it, I'm going to do it with things that I know aren't going to upset my body. Besides that, though, the period that I'm in right now is actually really weird. I am all about pork. I am bacon, I am pulled pork, I am pork ribs. It's just a crazy flux being pregnant. You really have no control, and it's kind of weird. So I'm excited to get this baby out and get back to my like normal way of eating.
Fabulous. We've got a few questions in the comments section. One thing that we were talking about before you came on was LDL. We had a little look at some data about whether high LDL is deleterious or not. And I know you are not one to shy away. So I'm happy for Richard to have a pop first if you want to. Does ApoB and ApoA matter in carnivore? So, Richard, do you want to pop an answer on, and then we'll get Dr. Solt to add something if you want?
Yeah, go on. Let Dr. Sabrina just jump in. I've taken up way too much airtime at the moment, I think, isn't it? So I've got a couple of things lined up. So I'll for Sabrina. So I'll let her jump in on this, and I'm gonna go into something a little bit more technical now as we go on, if that's okay.
So anytime I get a question about a specific value and does this value matter, I almost always say no, not because the value is not important, but because it matters within what context are we looking at this. You can have these elevations in an otherwise metabolically sound person, and you can also have these elevations in somebody who is metabolically very unfit. So the context absolutely matters. And if a person is carnivore, that doesn't always necessarily mean that they're metabolically fit. How long have they been carnivore? What type of carnivore are they? What other things do they do? Are they still really overweight? Have they developed some sort of insulin resistance because they've been carnivore for so long, which I've seen clinically actually happen. People who have almost no insulin levels, that if they were to reintroduce something like carbs, they would absolutely go into very diabetic symptoms. So I don't think that they are the end all be all by themselves. I will look at them in the context of everything else. So are their triglycerides elevated? Are their inflammatory markers elevated? Things like hsCRP, myeloperoxidase, PLA2, even things like oxidative LDL. And if we are seeing these elevations within that type of picture, then yes, absolutely, we might need to do something about them. But then that context also changes. So how are we going to address it? Do we adjust the diet? Do we consider statins? Almost always never. But again, it's all case by case. Unfortunately, we're all individuals.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when we talk about cholesterol is if you start with a false premise that high LDL cholesterol is causal for atherosclerosis, then all your ducks are in a line. So if you look at ApoB or with apolipoprotein, all that means, apo just means attached to lipoprotein, Greek. It's just so if you assume that high LDL was a problem, therefore high ApoB is going to be a problem because it's attached, if you see what I mean. So I think there's a lot more nuance to it, and I think people just need to go back to the drawing board and firstly decide what is the issue here. That's personally what I think. And there's lots of things to say. Actually, when you look at where plaques form, it's always in a high pressure area. It's always in an artery. So there's many reasons to say it's also where there's not laminar flow of the blood. There's lots and lots of things that point to it not being LDL necessarily, but the environment around that. So anyway, and also how does it get into the space? Well, what's caused that gap, that lesion for that thing to get into it? So that's maybe the cause, inflammation. Or you could look at the other theory, which is about thrombosis. And anyway, right, I don't want to get into the weeds too much because I've still got 18 hours of this to do. So let's have a look. So there's a nice phrase here, which
I just wanted to bring up. You bring up a very good point, just to hone in on that, is that cholesterol is not a root cause of anything except high cholesterol. Like, unless you're just assigning the diagnosis of high cholesterol, it is not a root cause. So we really do need to be better investigators versus just attacking one singular thing, because one of the concepts of elevated cholesterol is that it's elevating in response to a process that needs repair. Well, if you're not looking at that underlying process that needs to be repaired, whether it's you're producing more cholesterol because your hormones are declining in middle age, or you're trying to repair something else in your system, unless you're actually looking at, okay, where is this happening? And then you just go to try to lower it because that's what you've been told, that's what you've been taught, you're actually going to make things worse overall. And I think that's what's actually really disappointing, is that you end up with these people who are consistently getting sicker and sicker, despite doing what the medical, the whole medical paradigm suggests, which is lower that cholesterol to prevent disease.
Yeah, and I think one of the things Rich, I was trying to find the comment here because he really liked it. We were talking about levels, globally, because, I do the phlebotomy side of things, and these levels, these normative ranges are not optimal. It's a range, so people can be outside of those ranges and be optimal, and people can be in range and not healthy. So I think it's much more holistic than that. And also we were talking about language and how we say high cholesterol, but of course if you take out the plant sterols, is it high or is it actually where it should be? That's what we was talking before you got on. So, and it is how you talk about things. That's quite emotive to say, oh, you got high LDL. Well, no, actually you got the LDL you should have had. In fact, it was too low. That was the problem. It was artificially, reduced because of what you were doing. So yeah, that's cool. Right.
The biggest takeaway when it comes to cholesterol is it's imperative for life. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation, the production of hormones, and it's essential for healing. And it doesn't matter what the level is. If you were eating a ketogenic carnivore lifestyle, then your cholesterol, including LDL, is healing and repairing the body. We referenced the study first thing this morning with Dr. Chafee that shows, published on the BMJ, 68,000 participants, and it shows a reverse in representing 92% of the participants in regards to high LDL and all-cause mortality, which should tell you everything that you need to know. But cholesterol wants to heal and repair the body. We can go into the science, behind that if you want to, Stephen, but it'll probably take about 5 or 10 minutes by the time I get into the weeds. Maybe we can jump on that a little bit later on. But cholesterol is essential for life. We certainly shouldn't fear cholesterol. If anything, I'd like to get mine higher. In fact, the most recent test, it could come down ever so slightly, and I was a little bit upset.
That's hilarious. I love that. Yes, I agree with you for sure.
Yeah, so I think I've got some questions that were pre-submitted. I'm trying to find one that I can read quickly for you. Right. Please don't laugh at this, all right? Because I said any questions. This could be a parody question, but I'm going to tell you. Please don't laugh. Can I have nuts? Or are all herbs and spices, vanilla and cinnamon, onions and garlic allowed? What about pickles, fermented veg, olives, salads, cabbage? Any sauces ideas, please? Thank you. And the rationale for this is they need some variety and tasty food. She thinks it might get too boring. So do you have any ideas for sauces that are 100% carnivore that can really spice things up? Or are there sort of pickles you can have that are least problematic? What do you think?
I mean, the Pluck seasonings, I have no affiliation with that brand whatsoever, but there's seasonings that are made out of organs. So if you wanted like a pure carnivore option, I'd say that would be the thing to go. I feel like, so being in clinical practice for as long as I have been working with patients, the best way to get somebody to create lasting change is to meet them where they're at. So if somebody is embarking on carnivore and they need some sort of transition period, which was me personally too, so I can strongly relate to this and the feeling of, okay, I can't go full in yet just because it's not agreeing with me for whatever reason, whether I think I need variety or in my personal experience, it was a history of eating disorders where I absolutely could not have rules or somebody else's rules, so to speak. It was fine if it was coming from myself, but I couldn't have that because it would trigger those previous feelings. So I can empathize with that need. And the ultimate goal, I think, for all of us should be, well, what's going to get me towards this level of optimal health? And if right now what you need is a small amount of spices, maybe you need to put some, I don't know, maybe you're whipping up some egg whites for some sort of fake dessert and you got to put a little bit of cinnamon and vanilla in it. Fine. Like get the egg whites in because those are going to be beneficial for you, or even put the yolks in too because those are way more beneficial. But if what you need is a small amount to, again, get you to that eventual, we'll say strictness or eventual pure carnivore, go for it. Because it can work for some. Now, there are some people that absolutely need the cold turkey method where they have to cut everything off in order to, release what might be food addiction or those really specific cravings that might come up. That's fine. Only you can know yourself. And unless you're actually working one-on-one with a provider, somebody who says, oh yeah, no, this food may actually be a food intolerance for you. You should get rid of it right away. Don't even ease out of it. I think that it's, it's fine to be flexible, totally fine to be flexible, but also totally fine to still continue to do things that are going to work towards your goals. And the definition of carnivore can be different from everybody. I've seen some people use the definition of hyper carnivore, which is anything that's 70% or more animal based. We have obviously the definition of lion, meat, salt, water, definition of ketovore, which is mostly carnivore with the addition of small, maybe plant foods that are not going to, spike your to take you out of ketosis, I should say. As far as like safer options, you're asking about pickles. I personally actually do terrible with pickles and cucumbers. But for me, I can do like half of a fermented pickle and it won't bother me. The fermentation process seems to attack those lectins that I react very strongly to, and it seems to be okay. Sauerkraut seems to be an okay thing for some people, again, with the fermentation, which would bring us into more of like a Weston A. Price sort of approach to carnivore, where you're including these more traditional foods. And I think that can work for some people as well, too. And ultimately, once you've healed from whatever might be ailing you or why you found your way to carnivore in the first place, maybe that becomes how you live flexibly, right? So if you wanted to go to restaurants or you want to go to dinner parties or things with other people that aren't necessarily needing to eat this way, you can have that freedom.
That's brilliant. Richard?
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, it's it's a point we keep coming back to, isn't it? We see this within the carnivore keto groups quite often, where somebody will post a picture of a meal and everybody will jump on their back. That's not keto. That's not carnivore. And look, for a start, all carnivores are ketogenic. Mm-hmm. If you're carnivore, you're in the metabolic state of ketosis. And what is ketosis? It's a metabolic state. It's the metabolic state we're born in. It's the metabolic state that we've evolved in our entire existence. What we eat, what can we eat? Technically, we can eat anything and still maintain a ketogenic state as long as it does not pull us from that ketogenic state by altering that insulin to glucagon ratio. So if it takes a food, as you rightly say, that many would deem to be non-ketogenic or carnivore, but if it takes that to keep you on the straight and narrow, but you understand that there are negative effects to that, then that is absolutely fine. I think we need to try to stop jumping on or down the throats of these people who are new to, because what I find, I've got a keto group, somebody new will come on and they're super excited, they'll post a picture or something, and the first comment, that's not keto, that person removes themselves from the group, throws the towel in, and never progress. We need to support these people, not attacking them. We need to commend them. Congratulations for joining the group. You've made the first step in your journey. The benefits are fantastic. What you're doing is brilliant. There are different types of, as you rightly say, being in a ketogenic state and subsections of being carnivore. Where you want to fit on that path, or where you want to be, end your journey, reside on that path, as it were, is entirely to you. But it's down to knowledge and understanding that wherever you are now, you can be better off. But if you are at this point in your journey and you were benefiting and you were healing your body, then that's fantastic. But always understand you can go deeper down it. But I think we need to support these people. I'm carnivore to the core. That's a new term we can use, that carnivore to the core.
Love it.
It's
yeah.
I support all aspects of low carb, and we've touched base with this a couple of times this morning already. But Coach Stephen deals with a customer who is dirty keto. He does not want to gravitate away from that, but he's changed his life, lost a stupid amount of weight, healed his gut, and he is reaping the benefits. And kudos to him for doing that, and I think we should support that. If that's the choice he decides to make, that's fantastic. But always be aware, and this is what these pieces are for, isn't it? These education pieces, they show people where you are is fantastic, but if you remove this, and this, you'll be further down the line. But you need to make that decision yourself. We can't force this upon people, and we need to remember where we are in our journey as well. I mean, it's I've been on my journey for 10, 11 years. It's taken me 6 or 7 of that to become carnivore. I didn't just flick a switch and wake up. It's been these incremental changes. So if you need those those pieces, those sauces or condiments, whatever it may be, to allow you to maintain that journey, then so be it. So that's my 2 penneth.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And Dr. Sabrina there is soaking up your lovely Welsh accent. I can see that. And I think one of the things that the reason I asked so many people on, it was to actually prove this, that you don't have to be zero tolerance. None of the influencers that have come on are flat out, you can't do that, you can't do that. And most people do have that angle of, if it's the only thing that's going to keep you doing carnivore or be closer to carnivore and get rid of all the processed foods and seed oils and all that, then do it. If someone says to me, I fancy an avocado, I'm like, okay, well, eat an avocado. I mean, what is the big deal? Yeah. But I think there are, a little bit of demarcation. If someone says, I really fancy a donut, and I know that client, you're going to have one. Are you going to have one a day? Are you then going to have 2 a day? So you have to moderate. But something like sauces, I mean, a big thing that helped me was finding a carnivore mayonnaise, which is just an egg yolk and some butter whisked up together. And I was like, why did I not know about this 9 years ago? This is amazing. So, I mean, and that's mayonnaise that you can make literally fresh there and then. I mean, you don't have to distill it or do anything to it. So I thought that was good. I do have another question. Oh, by the way, I will tell you another thing that has got me in trouble when I've done what I eat in a day. I'm just going to show you some.
Yeah.
And it's a sausage, because that's processed.
Oh my God. I laugh because at this conversation, because just yesterday I had an Instagram post with like this meme, like ready to go. And it was about this topic. It was about the people who are policing carnivore and keto content with the don't do it. And I had the whole caption, like it was ready to go. It is saved in my drafts right now. And I'm just like, oh, I just didn't want to deal with the backlash from the purists. And this is exactly what you're saying. I don't know another, I don't know if you want to call us professionals, influencers, whatever, in the space that is a quote unquote purist. It's always these people that are in these Facebook groups that say things like, you're right. Oh, that's not carnivore. And I have never encountered a person who was on the receiving end of that was like, you know what? Thank you for that. My life has changed. I am now going to be the purest carnivore and you've fixed all my issues. It just doesn't happen. And it's so crazy to me that this is how people are trying to help other people. And then I think, well, maybe they're not. Maybe they're just trying to be the person who flexes on social media. Maybe they are sad and unhappy. Maybe they're actually not even carnivores themselves and they're just trying to troll these groups because maybe they're vegan and they're trying to get people to not be carnivore. Who knows? But ultimately, yes, we should be guiding people along, offering true assistance when needed, because we all know the benefits of this way of eating and how much it can cure different diseases. It can put people in better metabolic states. It's just overall, and it's better for the environment too. I mean, my gosh, there's benefits all around.
Yes, better for the environment is a big deal that I'm really pushing at the moment. I showed a thing earlier from the Smithsonian about 672 million birds are killed by pesticides, agricultural pesticides, in 1 year. 62 million in the States. So that's not environmentally friendly, is it? It's not good for animals. And anyway, we could get very political. What Richard doesn't know about you, Dr. Sabrina, is you're pretty feisty about these sort of things, which is great. I've got a brilliant question. It is a bit nuanced. I don't think you're going to shy away from it. And I think Richard might end up doing the rest of the 18 hours on an answer. So here we go. Right. Here we go. And I don't think it's a negative comment. It's a genuine question. I hear a lot about bile flow in other nutrition communities, specifically the vitamin A toxicity groups, and the idea that we need soluble fiber to help prevent bile essentially stagnating in the body. And as far as I can understand it, causing toxicity issues. Has either of you come across this theory?
I've never come across the theory, or I've never come across that clinically.
No.
Honestly, I truly have not. I truly have not had a patient walk into my office where I've been like, yeah, your bile is stuck. Like it has never happened. And maybe it's because I'm ignorant to it, right? Maybe it's because I just don't know to look for it. But it's honestly never been a concern.
Have you come across that, Richard?
No, I haven't, and it just adds more weight to the fact that fibre, I hate to break it to you all, is not essential. It's an anti-nutrient. We do not need it. There is no benefit to consuming fibre whatsoever. It negates the body's ability to absorb other nutrients. It's usually one of the main contributing factors to bowel issues, IBS, amongst other things. We have no need for fibre, and that's one of the big concerns of people beginning a keto and carnivore lifestyle. Carnivore in particular, where do I get my fibre from? Fibre feeds or breaks down into butyrate or feeds the colonocytes in the gut, but and that's the big thing that people will come back to when it comes down to fibre. But what people don't realize is that all protein breaks down into isobutyrate, isovalerate, and propionate, which is a short chain fatty acid, which feeds the colonocytes in the gut at a higher rate than butyrate from vegetables. So we can think of animal protein as animal fibre. And the interesting thing is that technically we don't even need that, because when we're ketogenic, we have beta hydroxybutyrate flowing through our veins. Every colonocyte within our body is fed with beta hydroxybutyrate, and the butyrate, the short chain fatty acid butyrate, is further broken down into beta hydroxybutyrate. But we don't need to do that to feed that single colonocyte, because every colonocyte is being fed. So it doesn't matter which angle you look at in regards to fiber. We don't need it. We need saturated fats for the production of bile. Fat is essential. Ditch the fiber, increase your fat. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Is that okay for a short version?
So with you on all of that. Yes. And personally, like, that was what really, I would say, cured my issues, because prior to this, as a naturopathic doctor, I had access to every single gut healing protocol you could imagine. And I did them. I would say I did almost all of them, everything, like, because my gut was so destroyed. And it truly wasn't until I cut out all vegetables, cut out all fiber, and was fairly, I would say, strict carnivore. I don't like the word strict. I was just carnivore because that was what felt good to me and what was doing really well for me, that I actually finally healed. And I had normal bowel movements, and I never got bloated, and I never had gas, and like nothing bad else ever happened. And even with that, taking out the anti-nutrients finally allowed me to get my nutrient levels up to good standards. I had hair grow back that I didn't even realize I was missing. Like, I had, like, these spaces right here were back, like there was no hair there, and now I've got hair there. So it's just amazing what properly fueling the body can do. And no, we don't need fiber for proper fuel at all, full stop.
Yes, I'm not a fan of fiber, I often quote Dr. Paul Mason's brilliant video, which looks at the study where they had high fiber, medium fiber, and zero fiber, and the resolution of all symptoms and bleeding and constipation was only, well, it was everyone in the zero fiber group had full resolution, and the high fiber and medium fiber did not. So that's a pretty good study. It's very small, bit underpowered, only like 65 participants, but it's the best study we've got. And another interesting question. So just so you know, Dr. Sabrina, we asked people to put some questions forward before we started, and I got quite a mixed bag. So that was one of them. Here's another one. There's often talk about long-term zero carb spiking cortisol and leading to issues longer term for certain people. Sally Norton recently emailed saying that long-term zero carb can cause issues, especially when dealing with oxalate dumping. So I'm keen to understand this more, and if anyone does recommend tactical, cyclical carb intake to prevent cortisol or other hormone issues long term.
Such a good question. This is something that I've touched on in some of my social media content, which is this relationship between being in a high cortisol state and diet. And I think the misnomer here is that people are saying that diet is the cause of the high cortisol state. And in my experience, that's almost never entirely true. So you can do things diet-wise that can exacerbate a hypercortisol state, like coffee on an empty stomach, for example, especially if you're a female. that's going to exacerbate your cortisol. But it's mostly the other habits that we have throughout the day. Consistent scrolling on our phones, consistent exposure to blue light, working at jobs we hate, being like not having proper connection with other human beings. We are in, unfortunately, this day and age where we have so many things that are stressing us out and creating these consistently elevated cortisol levels, and we're misappropriately attributing them to a diet state. Now, one of the things is that, yes, consuming carbohydrates can blunt the effects of cortisol, but I wouldn't recommend that as the treatment per se. I would recommend getting to the root cause of what's actually spiking the cortisol and start there. So if you are consuming coffee on an empty stomach and you are having a tough time with, this being in that ketosis state, figure that out. Because what's going to happen if you are consistently putting yourself into ketosis with a high stress state, or you're at least trying for that, you're actually going to likely to eat away at some of your lean muscle mass. You're going to detrimentally affect your muscle. So that's important because, well, we need muscle in our bodies. Some people will call it the organ of longevity. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, I don't know if you guys know who she is. She's got a lot of really great content on just this exact topic, why having muscle as you age is so important, preventing sarcopenia, preventing frailty, preventing fractures, being just an overall active tissue in the body, all very important. But the cortisol issue it's not caused by diet in pretty much anybody. So I don't think that you can support it with diet. And if anything, higher fat can be beneficial for some people. If you wanted to cycle carbs, I think you could. I think that's actually a reasonable thing for a different population. In my experience, working with women who have damaged their metabolism from years of yo-yo dieting can actually get better results instead of being strict by actually cycling some carbs very strategically with guidance. That's almost the only population type that I would recommend that for. The rest of us seem to do just fine. But again, focus on the root cause of the cortisol.
Richard? He's sitting there listening so intently.
My mic. Yeah, look, again, I mean, this is a topic that popped up earlier, isn't it? Long-term, ketosis causing negative issues in the body. I mean, I've been ketogenic for 10, 11 years. Cortisol tests are difficult ones, especially when we do it by blood, because cortisol is elevated in the morning. You'd have to do X amount of blood tests for cortisol throughout the day. So, these studies that show elevated cortisol levels, I question some of them anyway. But look, coming back to a point we made earlier, being ketogenic, I think, can cause an elevation. Fasting can cause an elevation in some people. Usually, the biggest contributing factor within a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle is lack of sodium. And again, coming back to a point we made earlier, when we begin keto, we all hit the coffee and the fat bombs and the bulletproof coffees, and this increase in caffeine affects the adrenals. It causes adrenal dysfunction, which can increase cortisol. So, if there is a link between diet, it's not direct in regards to being ketogenic, is what I would say. But I've measured my CRP and my DHEA, and my CRP, which is directly correlated in one of the studies that I reference in one of the talks that we do in regards to elevated cortisol levels. My CRP is always incredibly low. My DHEA is always high. I never have. It doesn't appear that I have any adrenal dysfunction or any elevated cortisol, and I've been ketogenic for a long, long time. Another factor that people would put down to damaging effects of being ketogenic is something called the Randall cycle, which Professor Barkay, I'm sure, will enlighten us. That's a topic that he's well versed in. So looking forward to chatting to him in regards to that one. But look, it's I've lived this lifestyle for 10, 11 years. All I've seen is benefits. And when we look at some of these influencers who, show that, testosterone is lower or thyroid hormone is lower, in women especially, well, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is also lower. And if that was an issue in regards to hormone being lower, thyroid stimulating hormone would be elevated. So all of these things, we need to look at them in context, and it's not just as easy as looking at a one thing. There's a bigger picture to this. I truly believe this is the healthiest way to live. But coming back, to the point, it isn't one size fits all. And, I do believe that some people will get away with consuming carbohydrate. I don't think it's essential. I believe that any so-called lack of carbohydrate can be, I don't think we need to test the metabolism or testing the insulin by cycling carbohydrates at all. These are things that I've tried and tested over the years, and I just seem to not benefit from them. I'm one person. The clients that I work with seem to have similar results to myself. We all look for what we call this like metabolic flexibility, where we can start introducing carbohydrate again. But when these people do, they seem to be worse off for it and gravitate back into an animal-based lifestyle. I've got questions on that, and I just believe that living, it's almost people looking for excuses, isn't it, to come away and feed sugar addiction again. But I'm all for living the animal lifestyle. I'm all for people experimenting. You need to try these things, but I only see benefit for living long-term ketogenic and carnivore-based lifestyles. But that's my 2 pence.
I agree.
I think the way I think the way we look at testing is just so wrong, because, like I say, I do the phlebotomy, and I don't do that much now, but I used to. And people would say, I failed a glucose tolerance test. Can I take it again? And I'd be like, why do you want to be able to cope with a drink that's got 15 teaspoons of sugar in? That you haven't failed. Yeah. Your body has said to you, that's too much sugar. I mean, exactly like if you have a drink that's got too much salt in, go, well, that's too salty. That's what you should be doing. You should be taking a sip of that and going, excuse me, man in the white coat or female in the white coat, I don't want to drink this. This is too sweet. That's what you should be saying.
Yes. That's the tolerance, right? Like that it's just too sweet for you. They make pregnant women do that test. They make pregnant women do a glucose tolerance test to check to see if you have gestational diabetes. And I'm like, I'm refusing that. First of all, I'm not really doing any care for this pregnancy, but I'm refusing that on the account of my metabolism is going to go crazy if I do that, because I haven't had anything like that. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that to this baby. I'm not going to do that to myself. There's 0 point to it. It's terrible. We could do a whole topic on the whole pregnancy care disaster that is our medical system, but we don't have to do that today.
The fat addict there, Adam, there, I've read effects that coffee can cause an even bigger increase in cortisol within the first 2 hours of waking. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a stimulant.
Yeah,
caffeine is a banned substance in sports.
And it's compounding on your body's own natural cortisol production in the morning. You're supposed to get a cortisol response in the morning. And to your points about the testing of the cortisol, there's some things that can impact just the testing of itself. So when you're getting it via blood draw and you are freaked out by needles, guess what's going to happen? Your cortisol levels are going to go up. And of course, we do have a pattern in which cortisol releases throughout our body. And it's supposed to be 4 times throughout the day that you're supposed to get these cortisol responses. And they're supposed to follow a specific curve. So some people will do salivary testing. I did that for patients, I think the last time I ran one of those was 2016, because it was much easier to just correlate symptoms versus make them pay for this $200 spit test that they have to spit into a tube 4 times a day. So that I kind of took that out of my toolbox. But one of the other things I test beyond the HSCRP that you were talking about that's always included as well is the hormone prolactin. So prolactin it's a hormone that promotes lactation. So it's a hormone that should be elevated in women who are pregnant and or breastfeeding. When we test this in people who aren't, alongside cortisol, and we see a spike in prolactin, but cortisol might be normal or it might even have an elevation, I like to call prolactin cortisol snitch. And it's because the signaling for those 2 hormones, it's almost like sister signaling. So there can kind of be a crossover on that. So if somebody has elevated prolactin, and of course we want to rule out something like a prolactinoma, which is a small prolactin secreting tumor that might occur in the brain. And it's usually almost always benign. But again, it's in the context of the rest of the labs and their clinical presentation. But if you have an elevation in prolactin, you can almost always guarantee that there is an issue as well with their cortisol response. So that's one of the ways that I kind of check my work, so to speak, because again, you can just have a false elevation because somebody was freaked out by getting the blood draw.
Fabulous. Yes, I think Richard's speechless. You see, Richard, another potential guest for your YouTube, because the carnivores out there, they know their stuff. So thank you, Dr. Sabrina. That's really good. I'm going to now make you a little bit. I'm going to promote you a little bit, because I'd like to know about your stem cell applications. What that's about, because I think Richard's ears will prick up, which they already did. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in the area of stem cells?
Yes. So, gosh, I've been in the regenerative medicine field since about 2013. So it's been about just over a decade now that I was performing regenerative injections. And the regenerative medicine field, that term can comprise various different modalities, including things like prolotherapy, stem cell therapy, PRP, and even things like birth tissue products, things like umbilical cord products, amniotic products, exosomes. And I've been doing this, like I said, for about 10 years. And the most common thing that we treat, I would say, are musculoskeletal disorders. So chronic pain, chronic injuries, things where people either don't want to do surgery or aren't a candidate for surgery, or have previously only been treating those with things like pain medications or hyaluronic acid injections, or trying to rehab them with physical therapy and not getting the results that they would like. Basically, what we do is we use these regenerative medicine tools in our toolbox, depending on what the patient's presentation is, and we actually cause the area to heal. One of the things that I actually started doing was incorporating, we'll call it a spectrum of carnivore diet for all the patients. So anytime someone comes in who wants to work with us, they actually get access to a whole online learning platform where we take them through transitioning them into mostly a keto carnivore-ish type of way of eating, because oh my gosh, it has skyrocketed results. I mean, for us at this point, a failure almost doesn't exist as far as our patient base goes, which is amazing, because we're kind of covering all of the bases when it comes to getting all that proper nutrition in, and of course, treating the areas that we need to be treating.
That's great. That's great. And Richard, surely that has inspired you to ask a question, a follow-up question.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously a lot of your research is around sirtuins, I'm guessing, Sabrina, and in regards to NAD plus and NADH and things. When the body is created, as we age, NAD plus through the electron transport chain, or cellular respiration, is converted into NADH, and this NAD plus is lowered, and this is what leads, isn't it, to this damage and this sign of aging. And when we become ketogenic, we can alter this ratio. So it costs the body 4 NAD plus molecules to process 1 glucose molecule, but it costs the body 1 beta hydroxybutyrate, or 1 NAD plus molecule to process 1 beta hydroxybutyrate molecule. So it's 400% more efficient. First question, one part of two. I mean, you've gone down the carnivore route. Do you attribute a lot of that benefit down to that increase in the NAD plus to NADH ratio? And then coming on from that, some of the therapy that you're using. So NAD plus is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, but you can use a supplement form of this in the form of nicotinamide mononucleotide. Do you use any of that, or is it a case of you just using the increase in NAD plus through the diet and lifestyle? Or do you attribute it a combo of the two?
So good question. I actually never even put the 2 and 2 together, which is the increase in the NAD and the decrease in the carbs, but it makes a ton of sense, because you're right, as you're saying, the amount that we make naturally just as humans goes down dramatically as we age. And it's kind of one of those hallmarks of aging, I would even say, because it relates directly to mitochondrial dysfunction and how your cells are able to function in that energy production way. So that makes complete sense. And yes, we use NAD frequently in our practice because, well, it works. We actually just do either intravenous administration or we do subcutaneous administration. I understand that there are the precursors that are available in oral form. I've personally never seen great results from them. That doesn't mean that there isn't people that are getting them, because I always talk about this. The built-in doctor bias is that the people who are doing great aren't coming to see us. So for me to say that I haven't seen this, don't take it too much with a grain of salt. But so I don't know exactly which ones are working. I just know what my patients are coming in for when they aren't working. And normally if they haven't been working with like the NMN, like you were saying, or even the NR, Dr. David Sinclair is the person who really speaks a lot about this. And I think he has gone back and forth on those two as far as which one's more potent. Do you know for sure if it's the NMN or the NR at this point?
Do you know, as you say, the research is to in and fro in, but I mean, most of the research I've done is in regards to NNM, which is a mouthful to say, isn't it? It's almost easier to say nicotinamide mononucleotide.
I know.
But yeah, it's an interesting topic, and it's one that you know, that when we look at health and well-being in regard, so I'm all for supplementation, but I mean living the lifestyle as well. And it was just interesting when you said there that, you know, you're using therapy treatments and in conjunction with living the lifestyle, and you've seen massive improvements. I just wondered whether that was the case. But it, you know, I'm all for supplementation. You know, as I own a supplement store, which, you know, I've personally call, you know, a ketogenic carnivore store, if you like, because everything there is classed as foods, you know, to me anyway, at least. But I'm always interested. I've never used NNM myself. I do work, I don't know if you know Lisa Tamati, an award-winning author from New Zealand. She and her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and was given a few months to live. 5 years later, she's still alive and trains 5 days a week. And she's done this, you know, through a ketogenic based lifestyle. But she's a big advocate of NNM. And she's the type of person that looks into this, you know, to the nth degree. So I mean, you know, I respect her opinion on it, but I've never tried it myself. But yeah, in regards to which is best, I'm unsure. But yeah, it's interesting to say the least, isn't it?
It is. It's cool stuff. And I think it's important that the other aspect too, I'm with you on supplements. I've used supplements personally with patients strategically over the years. And I think that it's important to be, again, very strategic with what you're doing, aim for short term while you dial in everything else. And then also take into consideration, can this person actually even absorb what I'm giving them? There's so much gut dysfunction that's kind of rampant throughout the world, we'll say. So if you are giving a person something, like, just make sure that it's not a waste.
That's brilliant. And I've been dying to say this name. Bob's Pistols and Pay Dirt has asked a question for the panel. We all understand the physical and mental benefits of carnivore lifestyle. Why is it so difficult for others, friends and family, to understand / accept carnivore?
I think there's layers to this. Most common layer, I think, being that everybody's just been kind of brainwashed. I mean, I certainly was. You know, I was brainwashed too. We have to eat the vegetables and all the things that have been fed to us literally and figuratively over the years. It's just kind of hard to get people to break free from that. And until a person reaches their own true breaking point, whether it's their health and mental or physical ways, they're not going to seek out other solutions. And even then, the amount of people that actually do find their way to this, I feel like, is very, very small, because most of the other people are still under the impression that their family physician is the person to go to for a solution. And that's often not the case at all, because all they're going to get is maybe a pill that might make them worse, cause other side effects, get another pill for that, continue on this trajectory. And they're never actually going to see these positive changes, and they're going to end up with those diseases of lifestyle that are killing everybody: heart disease, diabetes, certain types of cancers. And that's why we're in the situation globally that we're in with the health of humans. It's people don't know to change. They don't want to change. It's sad.
Yeah. I think you're right about the brainwashing, or I call it grain washing. But I definitely was that person. I can remember in my 20s, I did my bodybuilding show. Yeah. And not as good as Zach's, by the way. Zach is Sabrina's husband. Right. So, yeah, I did a bodybuilding show, and I can remember going through Muscle and Fitness magazine and seeing an experiment where because I was high carb at the time, low fat. Here's an experiment. Some of our bodybuilders are going to eat high fat. And I literally just flicked straight past. Well, that's not going to work. You know, I wasn't open to it at all in any way, shape or form. And you know, even when I started doing my qualifications, diabetes and obesity, it it was just the things not adding up. It took a long time for me to start thinking properly. So the reason I'm saying this is for those people that are upset or worried that their friends, family don't really accept it, try and put yourself back to before you discovered carnivore, how you found it difficult to understand, how you were saturated, no pun intended, saturated with news about fat being bad for you. All of that stuff is in there. You know, it is absolutely deep in that person. So I always say you've got to just actually wait it out, play the long game, because if you're convinced about it, and I get this with lots and lots of people I've coached, and I mean, I'm lucky enough to have over 500 people to draw from now that I've coached. The ones that have the friends and family supporting definitely have a much easier journey, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. But those that have the pushback, and again, I had it, strangely enough, I know we've mentioned this person a couple of times, but it was amazing. They'd lost 250 pounds, reversed non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, off diabetic medications. Actually, they literally could not move. All right. They could not get off the couch. They lost their job because they couldn't do any of their daily activities. So they went carnivore. Now, he said to me, everyone thought it was crazy. I was mad. I got to the point where I didn't want to live. I mean, that's how bad it was. Then by the end of the interview, long list. My mum's doing it. My mother-in-law, my father-in-law's doing it. My brother, because huge difference. This person who was basically lost in the minutiae of the NHS and medications was this fit, healthy person back at work, by the way, and everything's really great. Well, you could put yourself into that's both the spectrum there, the real worst case and the best case. But if you're in the middle and your partner's saying, I want you to eat some fruit and veg, please eat some fruit and veg, it's because they actually think they're doing the right thing by you. But if you stick to your guns, and in 6 months later, you're, looking better, you're off your diabetic meds, they will come round, I promise you, without you having to talk to them or have an argument, because it's self-evident that it's worked for you. And that doesn't mean they've got to eat like you either. I mean, you've got to accept their autonomy because you've made this decision that you wanted to do. And it's worked for you. It doesn't mean it will work for them. It probably would. Of course, I think it would. You probably think it would. But if they don't want to do it, if they're not open to it, it's not worth ruining your partnership, your marriage, or, falling out with your family over, because, that really crap phrase, you do you and I do me, is true. All right. If you eat this way and you feel great, and I promise you, I live in a real world of a family that think I'm weird. You just got to do what's best for you, but don't try and push it onto other people. The joke about, if you go into a restaurant or you go into a bar, how can you know the person in front of you is a vegan? Because they tell you. That's it. Because they can't stop talking about it. Don't be that person. Just be yourself and people will come to you. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Right. We have come to the end of the questions, which is great. Dr. Solt has kindly stayed on for a bit longer because I think she was down for 45 minutes. Do you want to see the hour out?
I'm happy to hang out with you guys. I think this is so much fun.
Okay. Any books? Oh, let's put this.
Books.
Bishop's Deep Learning. Any book suggestions for converting people? Something easy to read with lots of compelling images and diagrams.
Honestly, I have no idea because I only read, I wouldn't even read it, listen to one carnivore book, and it was Dr. Paul Saladino's. And the thing I enjoyed about it was his arguments for all the plant toxins. That was where I really got my first education on the negativities. I have not read it. Admittedly, I'm sorry, I'm a bad carnivore, but it's I could see that one being a good one too. Otherwise I don't really have a lot of book suggestions. It's just something that like you said, I dove into it based on watching my husband do better on it, because it was the physical proof, right? This conversation is so interesting because people, they want to do good. Like, this is why I love people and believe in people, because we see this in our community, people being like, how can I help everybody else? Because it helped me so much. And I'm like, that's beautiful. It's great. slightly misguided because nobody likes being told they're wrong. Nobody likes being told what to do, especially if it's uninvited. And I get that you have the greatest intentions for it. My husband certainly did. It took him a little bit of time to actually convince me, but I had to see his results in real time. I had to see his eyes getting whiter. I had to see his skin getting better. I had to see his mood improving. I had to see all of it for myself. I even had to see his poop. So, we have one of those marriages where we're just open about everything, but I had to actually see the evidence for my own eyes before I was like, all right, let me give this a shot, because again, that brainwashing ran really, really deep for me. So books are a fine suggestion, but at the same time, you can find books on everything. I mean, the medical medium has books, it's just because you have evidence that you deem good doesn't mean it's going to be automatically received by the other person. And we see this, we've seen the vegans push their stuff. We've seen the breatharians, the fruitarians. I mean, everybody's got their hill that they're dying on and their evidence and their resources for why they're doing their things. And I don't think it's about that. I think it's honestly, this movement in particular, it's that social proof. It's the people that are truly healing from these really, really deep medical issues and sharing their experience.
Yeah, I think that's basically what I was saying about your friends and family. Nothing beats seeing somebody or learning. I mean, Zach looks amazing. He's a lovely guy, and bit shy, doesn't put his opinion out there that much. But I'm not plugging books for guests. Sean Baker's book is a very good gateway into Carnivore if you're interested. My website has some really good tips if you want to start. There's a video on my thing, 19 tips for starting. Then we've got Maria Emmerich and Craig Emmerich, the Carnivore cookbook. Lies, my doctor told me, Ken Berry, who sadly we couldn't get on. Judy Cho, Carnivore Cures, very good. One of the things I would say about Judy Cho is she gets into some real brilliant stuff about things we rarely talk about, like food additives and coloring and dyes and stuff in food. And I think that's pretty good as well, because there are a lot of additives. I don't think we really suffer that much, Richard, in the UK, but I think in America there are a lot more additives and colors and stuff. What would you say about books or anything like that, Rich?
To be honest, I mean, I'm not a massive book fan. I find YouTube to be a fantastic source of information, but you need to be able to read between the lines of certain things, because as Sabrina rightly says, there's an argument for everything. But I mean, you only need to look at the likes of people like Dr. Chafee, 130 odd thousand followers. The information he's given out can't be that bad if he has that many followers. The information, the reason we are doing this, the information that we put out, the information Sabrina puts out, the information you and I put out, it's all content available on our YouTube channels. It's free and it's available on all our websites. And I think we all make an effort to try to break it down into simple terms. I know, we like to go into the weeds a little bit, into the science and stuff as well, but there are simplified versions of how it impacts health and well-being. And just circling back to a point that you guys made earlier. It is incredibly difficult beginning your journey. I received a lot of backlash. My friends, family, my mother in particular, and that side of of the family. What about your cholesterol and your saturated fats? All out of of goodwill and care, but not understanding that cholesterol is essential. And it comes back to this misinformation we've been fed for the last 50 years, that saturated fats are bad for us, cholesterol should be feared, too much sodium is bad for us, we need to eat our whole grains and consume our seed oils. Everything that we're told is back to front, isn't it? But I there's a point there that I've highlighted, Andy C77, should you not be more pushy if it saves lives? And I almost feel like I'm that person, because I am that vegan, the anti-vegan in the pub, although I don't go to a pub. But, I am that person telling people in the street, and maybe I shouldn't, but I do feel that it's almost my duty to tell people. But I've lost friends and family over it because, I almost seem too pushy. But I feel that we have the magic elixir to help them. And it's just really disheartening when they're not willing to step back and look at the evidence and listen and take it on board and change their life, because the information we're giving out is life-changing. And I think that we should be pushing it. We should be pushy, to a degree. But as you rightly say, the proof is in the pudding. We continue on our journey. We improve our health and well-being. We've all lost a ton of weight, improved health and well-being. The people we work with see these improvements, and that ripple effect, will draw further down the line and convert those other people moving forward. But it's online is the best references for me. So that's the long version of.
Yes.
You've probably noticed there's another person on the screen, and we'll introduce him in a second because he's early, which is fantastic. But what we've found, Coach Bronson, is that as people have been passing the baton, it's nice to come in and hear the tail end and then segue into the next thing. And I want to just say, I am looking at the comments. I'm trying to organise 30-odd guests, a live stream, and the subject question, and the chat. I can't do everything. But the really interesting thing, the guy that asked about the books has just said, it's all well and good you saying about YouTube, but my dad's old. He doesn't look at YouTube. He wants to read a book. So that's why we recommended the books. So Dr. Sabrina, last question, and then we'll introduce Coach Bronson, who's looking very studious there. Bob's Pistols and Paydo would really like to hear Dr. Solt's opinions on stem cell, Wharton's jelly versus cord blood, etc. Does that make sense to you?
IV stem cell, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I am 100% a proponent for intravenous stem cells. However, not necessarily Wharton's jelly or cord blood, and I'll tell you why. There's different regulations in the United States versus other countries. And in other countries, you can actually get pure cord blood products, Wharton's jelly products that are prepared properly. In the United States, our birth tissue market is sad and deceptive at best. Not to say these products are all bad all the time, but according to the FDA, and this doesn't mean we like the FDA, but according to the FDA, it is illegal to do the transfer of live cells from one person to another, which means that these products that are created from birth tissues don't actually contain live stem cells by the time they reach the patient, both legally and due to how they're produced. So they have to undergo cryopreservation, irradiation. They undergo what's called a shock thaw in the office, where it's just kind of warmed up either at room temperature or by your hands. Stem cells are very sensitive cells. They die. And so that's that topic. Now, intravenous stem cells, the absolute best way, in my opinion, clinically, I can back this up with data, I can back this up with studies, in the United States at least, is through intravenous stem cells as a result of getting them from a patient's own adipose tissue. That has been by far the greatest results that we've seen. And we can do this for autoimmune disorders. We can do it for simply anti-aging benefits, neurological disorders. I mean, anywhere the blood travels in your body, putting stem cells intravenously, you're going to benefit from. I could go on for this topic for a while, but I will leave it at that. Is that great thing to do? Do not trust any of the birth tissue products in the United States. If you have a company that is selling these to you, or pushing them for you, or a clinic that says this is the best, ask them if they do any other stem cell therapies, because a true regenerative medicine practice will offer all of it based on what the patient might need, not just kind of one tool, because that means that they don't actually have the skill set or understanding. And I'm just going to throw shade there really quick, is that, yeah, they just don't. So find a place that can do all of it. Ask them which company they source their products from, and contact that company to get a third-party analysis of their final product after it's been thawed out. They won't be able to provide it for you to actually say that it contains live stem cells. So I will leave it at that.
Brilliant. Dr. Sabrina Solt, do you know Bronson Dant?
I don't think I do. Hi.
Ah, okay. Well, Bronson Dant is
virtually somewhat, but we haven't actually met.
Yeah, I think you two
guys.
Yeah, you should do a podcast together, because I will speak of Bronson Dant's amazing brain and his capabilities to listen to new stuff is incredible. And I just want to say, it's 7 hours in, Bronson, and I've just read IV as 4 because I'm that old. I used to write in Roman numerals. So anyway, Dr. Sabrina Solt, that has been a pleasure. Thank you for doing that extra 15 minutes. So many.
Thank you, Sabrina. Absolute pleasure.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Good luck the rest of the carnivore-thon. Hopefully you guys get to eat and drink something, meaty and refreshing. But yeah, you guys are doing awesome. So good job. Good job on this.
You guys should have a
Thank
whole
you.
30-minute session where it's just you eating.
Yes.
That's part of the whole part of this.
Just putting a ribeye away. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, Sabrina. Thank you.